A Wharfside gamble that redefined power. It began with a wager so small that most of the city never noticed it. A quiet deal made on the edge of the Thames, where fog rolled in like a veil and fortunes shifted with the tide. No crowds gathered. No proclamations were issued. Yet the single gamble would alter the balance of influence in London and reshape the way power flowed through its streets. In this moment, the city was changing faster than many understood. London's docks pulsed with ambition. Ships arriving heavy with goods, merchants chasing opportunities that stretched beyond the horizon, financiers taking positions they barely recognized. And behind it all stood a simple truth. Whoever controlled the movement of trade controlled the future of the city itself. That is why this gamble mattered. It offered a glimpse into the future long before the rest of London could see it. To understand the stakes, we must step back to a time when the Waterfront was more than a place of commerce. It was a battlefield of influence where guilds, merchants, and investors fought for control of space, terrace, and access. The wars were arteries of wealth, and every crate hauled ashore carried a silent question. Who profits and who decides? At first, the gamble appeared harmless. A group of ambitious traders pooled their resources to secure a small stretch of dock, hoping to streamline their operations. They saw inefficiencies everywhere. Delays, fees, disputes, and a constant friction that slowed trade more than storms or distance ever could. Their idea was simple: build a system that moved goods faster, cleaner, and with fewer meddling hands. But beneath that simplicity lay a bold challenge to the established order. The reveal came when these traders realized they could offer something others could not: reliability. Where older wars ran on tradition, favor, and sometimes corruption, this new space ran on precision. It turned chaos into rhythm. It made speed a commodity. Merchants began to notice. Captains began to prefer it. And soon, what started as a gamble grew into a force reshaping the docks themselves. But this transformation brought tension. The existing powers along the waterfront sensed a shift. Influence that had once been guaranteed began to slip, grain by grain, into the hands of newcomers. The gamble had created momentum. Quiet at first, then unmistakable. London stood on the brink of a conflict born not of violence, but of efficiency. A new kind of power was rising from the river's edge, and the old guard could feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. As the new wharf gained momentum, its influence rippled across the riverfront. Merchants who once accepted delays as an unavoidable cost of trade now found themselves rethinking their loyalties. Captains began timing their arrivals to secure space at the efficient dock, knowing that every saved hour meant fewer risks, fewer fees, and greater profit. What had begun as an experiment was quietly becoming a standard, but the rise of this new system unsettled those who had long controlled the waterfront. The traditional wharf owners viewed the change not as innovation, but as an intrusion. Their influence relied on established customs, long-standing agreements, and a network of personal ties woven over decades. The newcomers threatened all of it. With each ship they attracted, the old guard lost a measure of authority. Tension sharpened as disputes multiplied. Arguments over docking rights, tariffs, and labor erupted into heated confrontations. Established guilds accused a new operation of undermining order. The innovators countered that London's swelling commerce demanded efficiency, not outdated rituals. Neither side yielded. The air along the docks thickened with resentment, each tide bringing new friction. Behind closed doors, the conflict turned strategic. The old guard lobbied officials to impose restrictions, hoping to slow the newcomers through regulation. They warned that unchecked innovation would destabilize the riverfront. The innovators responded by forming alliances with merchants frustrated by years of delay and mismanagement. They argued that London's future lay in adaptation, not preservation. As the struggle deepened, something unexpected happened. Smaller operators, previously overshadowed by the dominant powers, began to choose sides. Some saw opportunity in the rising system and offered their support. Others feared losing their place in the old order and aligned themselves with tradition. The riverfront fractured into competing factions, each convinced that their vision represented the city's best path forward. Meanwhile, the new wharf continued to refine its operations. Processes became smoother, ledgers clearer, coordination tighter. It became a machine of movement, transforming chaos into flow. And with every improvement, more ships abandoned the old docks in favor of reliability and speed. Profit followed efficiency, and influence followed profit. But beneath the surface, the stakes were rising. What started as a simple gamble had evolved into a battle between two worlds, one clinging to its inheritance, the other forging a new model of power. Every decision, every alliance, every rumor now carried weight. The river had become a stage where the future of London's commerce was quietly being rewritten. And as tensions mounted, the city edged closer to a confrontation that neither side could avoid, a moment when innovation and tradition would collide, revealing which force truly commanded the tides. The riverfront's fracture deepened as each tide pulled London further into a struggle neither side could contain. What began as a quiet gamble had become a contest of vision, one that echoed through warehouses, counting rooms, and taverns where rumors moved faster than ships. Every decision taken at the docks now carried the weight of a city in transition. The old guard tightened its grip. Wharf owners who relied on inherited influence now resorted to tactics born of desperation. Fees were reshaped to penalize captains who chose a new wharf. Favoritism, long practiced in shadows, emerged in the open. Laborers loyal to traditional docks were warned that supporting the newcomers would cost them their places. The waterfront grew tense, its familiar rhythms replaced by sharp glances and hushed arguments. But the innovative wharf refused to bend. Its founders understood that their strength lay not in heritage, but in performance. Each setback pushed them to refine their system further. They developed schedules that maximized throughput. They coordinated with merchants days before ships arrived, eliminating chaos at the point of unloading. They cultivated transparency in rates and procedures, drawing trust from traders exhausted by uncertainty. As the two systems pulled apart, merchants found themselves caught in the middle. Many had long relationships with traditional wharf owners, ties woven through families and fortunes. Yet the demands of a growing global trade were unforgiving. Delay meant loss, inefficiency meant risk, and the newcomers offered solutions the old guard refused to consider. Every merchant who shifted allegiance strengthened the rising model and weakened the inherited one. The conflict escalated when a cluster of high-value ships approached London after a long voyage. Both sides knew these vessels would set a precedent. If they chose a new wharf, momentum would tilt irreversibly toward innovation. If they returned to the old docks, tradition would regain its footing. The race to secure their loyalty became frantic. Offers were made, promises whispered, threats implied. When the ships finally appeared through morning fog, crowds gathered along the river to watch. Their choice seemed to unfold in slow motion, masts turning, hulls drifting, the tide carrying them toward one side of the docks. And when they anchored before the new wharf, the waterfront felt the impact like a shockwave. The old guard erupted. Accusations of manipulation filled the air. Demands for investigations circulated through guild halls and council chambers. For them, this was not merely a loss of business. It was a blow to the system that had sustained their authority for generations. Their anger hardened into resolve. Yet the victory for the innovators came with its own burden. The influx of new traffic exceeded their planned capacity. Laborers strained to maintain the promised efficiency. One misstep risked undermining the trust they had worked to build. And as the pressure mounted, rivals waited for any sign of weakness. London now stood in the center of a rising storm. On one side, tradition fought to reclaim relevance. On the other, innovation struggled to justify its rapid ascent. The docks, once a place of predictable rhythms, had become a battleground where the city's future hung in the balance. And with tension tightening on every front, London braced for the moment when this quiet power struggle would erupt into full confrontation, revealing which vision would define the river's next century. The confrontation erupted on a morning when the river carried an unusual stillness, as if the tide itself sensed what was coming. A dispute over docking access, small in appearance, enormous in implication, ignited the tensions that had been building for months. Laborers clashed. Wharf officers argued in full view of merchants and sailors. The conflict that had lived in whispers now stood exposed to the entire city to witness. The old guard struck first, moving to block ships from entering the new wharf's berths. They claimed violations of long-standing customs, insisting that order depended on the traditions they had upheld for generations. But the newcomers refused to yield. They countered with records, agreements, and a growing list of merchants who demanded the efficiency only the new system could provide. What had once been a quiet gamble was now a public struggle for dominance. The standoff spread beyond the docks. Council chambers buzzed with heated debate as each side lobbied for authority. Guild leaders argued that the innovations threatened the stability of the entire waterfront. Merchants argued that the old ways were stifling the city's growth. The divide cut through every layer of London's commercial world, forcing individuals to choose between sentiment and survival. Then came the decisive moment. A fleet of ships, larger and more valuable than any that season, approached the city unexpectedly early. Their arrival compressed the standoff into a single choice: allow them to berth efficiently, or let crowded waters turn into chaos. The old guard held their ground, refusing passage through their traditional channels. The new wharf opened its docks instantly, signaling readiness. Captains, faced with no time for politics, steered toward the only option that assured movement. The river erupted in motion. The new wharf absorbed the surge with precision, unloading cargo, coordinating crews, and proving beyond doubt that it could handle responsibility the old system had failed to prepare for. Merchants watched, stunned, as a gamble made on a quiet stretch of waterfront revealed its true potential, not as a challenger, but as a future. In that moment, the old guard's argument collapsed under the weight of reality. Influence shifted not through force, but through competence. Power flowed toward the system that worked. The resolution did not arrive as triumph or humiliation, but as recognition. The city needed the efficiency the innovators had created. The old wharf owners, once pillars of authority, now adapted to survive. Some merged operations, others embraced the new methods. Slowly, the riverfront settled into a new order shaped not by tradition, but by performance. From this transformation, London learned a lesson that would echo through its financial history. Power is not inherited. It is earned through the systems that carry the city forward. Innovation, when guided by purpose, can redefine everything it touches. Subscribe to join the journey.